The morning sky over Ogidi-Ago was still thick with mist when Amarachi sat up on her raffia mat. The air smelled of dew and damp clay, and her thin arms reached for the shallow calabash bowl beside her. Inside, small ripe oranges glistened with the water she'd used to wash them the night before. One by one, she turned them over, checking for bruises. She wasn't just selling fruit, she was bargaining for her brother's life. From the next room came the sound of low, tense voices. "Mama Ifeoma, the money is finished," said Ngozi, her mother. "But what of the yam sale money?" Mama Ifeoma's voice was quieter, sharper. "I used it for Chisholm's medicine. He didn't eat yesterday. He's burning." Then silence. Thick, shameful silence. Amarachi held the calabash close and stared at the wall. At just 12, she knew what death felt like. It sounded like that silence. Her younger brother Chisholm, only 6, had been coughing for days. His eyes had turned red, his little frame burning with fever. They'd gone to the community clinic, but the nurse had said plainly, no payment, no treatment. Amarachi had watched her mother sell her wedding ring, her father's old walking stick, even Amarachi's school books. But the money was never enough. Outside, Ogidi-Ago had changed. The village once echoed with children's laughter and women pounding yam. Now it whispered stories of girls disappearing. A Daisy on her way back from the river, Ngozi's niece gone while fetching firewood. Gone, no ransom, no trail, just silence. Amarachi wore her only dress, faded ankara with a tear at the side. Slipping her feet into old slippers, she stepped into the crisp morning air. The road to Nonkwo Ogidi Market was 40 minutes long, coated with red dust that stuck to the sole and the soles. She walked. With the calabash of oranges balanced on her head, she thought of Chisholm's weak breathing, of the nurse's cold eyes, of the aching silence in their hut. She reached the large udara tree at the market and set down her bowl. "Sweet oranges! Fresh oranges!" she called, her voice soft but steady. People passed. Few looked. Fewer stopped. She had sold only 3 when she noticed him. A man, dark-skinned, tall, his hair silver like old moonlight. His senator-style caftan was spotless, his sandals untouched by dust. He didn't smile, he didn't blink. He just stood there, hands behind his back, watching her. Amarachi looked away uneasy. He walked over slowly, crouched beside her. "How much?" he asked, voice like calm wind. 10 naira, she replied, eyes on her feet. He picked 5 oranges, placed money in her bowl, and stared at her again. "What's your name?" "Amarachi." He nodded and walked away. But as he disappeared into the crowd, Amarachi's stomach clenched. Something about the way he looked at her, not hungry, not cruel, but measuring. She didn't know what it meant. Not yet. But something had shifted, and deep inside her, a tiny ember sparked. By late afternoon, Amarachi had returned to the market, not to sell, but to beg. Her oranges were nearly gone, and with trembling hands, she had stolen a few coins from Mama Ifeoma's tin box. Guilt gnawed at her, but Chisholm needed something. Anything. She approached Auntie Abiri, the herbalist whose table was always stacked with bitter leaves, roots, and prayers. "Please, Auntie, I need something. For fever." Eber looked at the coins in her palm, then into Amarachi's tired face. "This one no reach," she said gently. "But boil these leaves in small water. Let him sip it slowly." She wrapped the dried leaves in old punched newspaper, handed it to her, and added in a whisper, "But if his eyes roll again, take him to the hospital, or it might be too late." Amarachi murmured thanks and turned away. Across the road, under the shadow of a yam stall, he was there again. The man with the silver hair. Chief Obiajulu Nwokoya. Still wearing clean clothes, still untouched by dust, and still watching her. Their eyes met. Amarachi froze, then ran. That evening, the sun slipped behind the red rooftops of Ogidi-Ago. Ngozi sat on the mud floor, cradling Chisholm, whose lips were cracked and whose breath came in shallow whispers. Amarachi peeled one last orange, her hands trembling with fatigue and fear. That's when they heard it. Not a bike, not a keka. A car. Quiet, smooth, wrong. A black SUV rolled to a stop before their compound, its body gleaming like oil in the fading light. The door opened, and Chief Obiajulu stepped out in a flowing navy blue caftan. He held a brown envelope. Ngozi stood, confused. Mama Ifeoma stepped out, broom in hand. Good evening, he said, calm as a quiet storm. I came to speak with your daughter. Which one? Mama Ifeoma asked, already knowing. Amarachi. The girl shrank back. I saw her at the market, he said. She reminded me of someone I once knew. He held out the envelope. This is a bride price. The compound fell silent. The wind stopped. Even the chickens seemed to hold their breath. Ngozi stepped forward. She is a child, she said, voice shaking. You are old enough to be her grandfather. Obiajulu nodded. True, but I can save your son, tonight. I have made arrangements at a private hospital in Alka. He will be treated with dignity. Ngozi's lips quivered. Mama Ifeoma gripped her broom tighter. You don't even know us, Ngozi whispered. I don't need to, he said quietly. Sometimes we do what is right, not what is understood. No one moved. No one could speak. The car door closed again, and he was gone. But he left the envelope behind. That night the lamp flickered low. Shadows danced on the cracked wall. Ngozi sat, the envelope in her lap. Amarachi peeled the last orange. Neither spoke for a long time. Then Ngozi whispered, He wants to marry you, for your brother's life. Amarachi dropped the peel. No, she said, her voice hard. He's old, older than Papa before he died. I won't be sold like yam. Ngozi broke into tears. I've tried everything, she cried. Everything. There's nothing left. Then suddenly Chisholm began to shake. His limbs convulsed. His eyes rolled back. His fists clenched like stones. Jesus, Ngozi screamed. He's seizing. They lifted him barefoot, running into the night. The road to the clinic was a blur of shadows and red dust. The nurse looked up. Where is your deposit? Please, Ngozi begged. He's dying. No money, no help. And that was it. They walked home, broken, with Chisholm limp in their arms. Later that night, Amarachi sat still in their hut. Her voice was low. I'll do it. Ngozi turned to her. What? I'll marry him. If it saves Chisholm, I will. And with that choice, the fire inside her took its first breath. The sky was still ink dark when a black car returned to Ogidi-Ago. It pulled up outside Amarachi's compound with quiet finality. This time it did not leave. Inside the compound, the mood was heavy. There were no songs, no ululations, no Ulaga women with calabashes on their heads. Just soft whispers, rustling wrappers, and the sharp clink of a metal plate somewhere in the distance. Amarachi stood still as Mama Ifeoma tied thin beads around her neck. They are small, the old woman whispered, but they will carry your name, not your shame. She wore a white lace gown that didn't belong to her. It had once belonged to a girl named Nkeru from the next village over. Nkeru had been sent to marry a trader in Kano. She never came back. The gown returned. No one asked how. Amarachi's feet were bare, her hands cold, her eyes dry. Ngozi stood in a corner of the room, wringing her fingers like washing clothes with no water. Outside, neighbors gathered near the gate. Some covered their mouths. Others pretended not to look. The whispers spread like smoke. She's only 12. They say the family agreed in silence. Did you see the car? It's not even dusty. Who lives like that? Ogidi-Ago has lost its soul. Then he came. Chief Obiajulu stepped out of the car dressed in a deep gray caftan, his silver beard perfectly trimmed, his eyes blank. No dust on his shoes, no sweat on his face. He didn't greet anyone. He didn't bow. He simply walked to the center of the compound and waited. A local elder cleared his throat and opened a tiny book. The ceremony was short, just a few verses from Psalms, A nod from the elder, and two names said aloud. Do you, Chief Obiajulu no Okoye, take Amarachi Ngozi to be your wife? Yes, he said quietly. Amarachi was not asked. No one waited for her answer. She said nothing. She just stood there, still, bare, unnamed. When it ended, Obiajulu turned and began to walk to the car. Amarachi followed behind like a shadow with no source. People parted as they passed. Some stared. Others turned away. Did you see the way she looked? She didn't blink. Something's wrong. That man didn't even smile. The car drove up the hill, past the last houses, past the shrine under the mango tree, up the slope that led to Umicum Hill, where no one went except for grazing goats and whispers. Then she saw it, a mansion, large, quiet, gleaming like a sleeping beast, its gates tall, its glass windows reflecting a sky that now looked like it didn't belong in this world. The car stopped. Obiajulu stepped out, unlocked the door, and said, "This is your room." She entered a space too clean, too quiet. The cream-colored walls had no pictures. The bed was small, covered in stiff white sheets. There was a single chair, a rug, and a folded nightgown on the mattress. He didn't linger. He walked out and locked the door behind him. Amarachi sat on the bed, clutching her knees to her chest. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was loud, the kind that made you hear your own heartbeat, your own fear. She remembered the words whispered by market women. They take what they want. Close your eyes. Don't fight. You're his wife now. She didn't cry. She didn't sleep. She just waited. Then, a knock. The door opened. Obiajulu stepped in, holding a tray. On it was a steaming bowl of ogbono soup, 2 slices of yam, and a glass of water. He set it down without speaking. Then he looked at her and said gently, "You should eat," and left. No hand, no command, no pressure. Just soup, in silence. And for Amarachi, that was more terrifying than pain. Days passed in the mansion on Umicum Hill. Each morning, Chief Obiajulu knocked twice on Amarachi's door. He brought tea in a clay cup, honey bread, or sometimes pawpaw slices wrapped neatly in napkins. He would place the tray on the stool, say softly, "You're safe here," and then leave. He never touched her, never asked her to leave the room. He never even sat close. That was the part Amarachi couldn't understand. She had prepared herself for pain, for violation, for what the world warned girls like her about. But instead, all she met was silence and strange kindness. And that silence grew louder each day. She ate slowly. She changed into soft sky blue gowns left for her. She wrote her name over and over again in the notebook he gave her. Amarachi, Amarachi, Amarachi. She wanted to remember who she was. One afternoon, Obiajulu knocked and asked, "Would you like to visit your family?" Her heart leapt. Yes. The car was waiting. They drove down the red road, past the shrines, past the grazing goats, into the heart of Ogidi-Ago. Outside the compound, Chisholm was sitting up, smiling. His cheeks were fuller. He held a spoon. He was eating. Amarachi ran to him, held him tightly, and for the first time in weeks, her heart did not feel heavy. It felt warm. They stayed only an hour. No one from the village came close. Some stared. Others whispered. But Amarachi didn't care. Her brother was alive. That night, she returned to the mansion and couldn't sleep. She wandered through the cool hallway. The air smelled like lemon oil and old wood. Her bare feet moved soundlessly past shelves and smooth curtains. Then she saw it. A door. Always locked. Now slightly open. She stepped in. The room was dim but warm, lit by a single floor lamp. The walls were covered with photographs, dozens of them. Girls and boys, different ages, different countries, some smiling, some serious, some scared. Each photo had a name and a date. Some names were crossed out with a red X. Amarachi walked slowly, her fingers trembling. She knelt by a large wooden chest and opened it. Inside were letters, stacks of them. Dear Chief Obiajulu, I passed my WAEC. Thank you for saving me. Thank you for taking me away from the man with the cane. I now live with people who let me sleep at night. Tears rose to her eyes. She didn't know what this meant yet. She didn't know how or why. But this wasn't a dungeon. It was a memory room. Then the air shifted. She turned. Chief Obiajulu stood at the door. Not angry, not shocked. Just tired. He stepped inside and said, softly, I suppose it's time you knew. Chief Obiajulu walked into the room slowly, his feet making no sound on the thick carpet. His eyes scanned the walls lined with faces, then fell on Amarachi, still kneeling beside the open trunk, clutching the letters in her trembling hands. He sighed. You have questions, he said quietly. Amarachi nodded but said nothing. Her throat was tight. He walked over to a photograph, a girl with cornrows holding a slate in one hand and a tattered teddy bear in the other. That's Halima from Zamfara, he said. She was going to be married to a man 50 years her senior. Her parents had no choice. I found her before he could. He turned to Amarachi. I didn't marry her. I didn't marry any of them. You're the first. Her voice cracked. Why me? Obiajulu walked to the chair and sat heavily. For a moment he looked older than ever, more man than mystery. Because you were already marked. You didn't know it, but someone had taken interest in you. He paused. That day I saw you at the market. There was another man watching you first, dressed like a local, pretending to buy palm oil. I've seen his face before, in 3 other villages, always just before a girl goes missing. Amarachi's heart dropped. I knew I didn't have time, he continued. I had to get to you first in a way no one could reverse. She stood slowly. So the marriage was to protect me? Yes, he said. A legal shield, one the traffickers wouldn't challenge. Because I don't just rescue girls, Amarachi. I hunt those who take them. He opened a drawer from the wooden chest and handed her a file. Inside were names, photos, maps, and documents. Evidence. These men, he said, are protected by silence, by wealth, by tradition. But they can be undone, quietly. Amarachi's hands shook. Obiajulu looked at her with eyes that were no longer tired, but clear. I don't know how much time I have left, he said, but I believe you're the one meant to continue this. Amarachi stepped backward, overwhelmed. Me? I'm just a girl. So were all of them, he whispered, nodding at the pictures. He rose and walked to a small table, picked up a thin brown envelope with her name on it. When the time comes, open this. He placed it in her hands. Then for the first time he bowed his head, not in weakness, but in solemn reverence. Amarachi stood frozen, the candlelight flickering against her cheeks. The silence between them was no longer filled with fear. It was filled with purpose. The morning came, but something was wrong. Amarachi waited for the usual 2 soft knocks on her door. None came. No tea, no footsteps, no tray. She slipped out of bed, her feet cold against the tiled floor, and stepped into the hallway. The light from the windows seemed dimmer. The silence had changed, no longer heavy with mystery, but with absence. She checked the garden bench. Empty. The study, still. The library, quiet. She walked to the one place she had never dared enter, Chief Obiajulu's bedroom. She knocked, once, twice. No response. Her fingers trembled as she turned the handle. The door creaked open slowly. Inside, the old man lay peacefully on his side, his silver hair resting gently on a white pillow. His chest did not rise. His face was calm, like someone who had finished a long journey and finally laid down to rest. Amarachi didn't move. She didn't cry. She just stood there, silent, the way he had always been. Then she saw the envelope on the bedside table, her name written neatly on the front. She opened it slowly. Amarachi, if you are reading this, I am gone, but that is okay. I have lived. In the library under the red-spined book titled Whispers from the Ashes, you will find everything: documents, bank codes, land titles, files, and the names. Your name is now on all of it. This house, this mission, this silence I carried. I didn't save you so you would owe me. I saved you because the world needs a girl who knows fire and how to carry it. Don't waste it. Oh. She pressed the letter to her chest. Her throat ached, but she didn't cry. Not yet. 3 days later, barrister Zainab Bako arrived in a black jeep from Abuja, dressed in fine lace with a folder in hand. She read the will aloud to a room full of stunned villagers. The full estate of Chief Obiajulu Nukoya, assets, properties, legal holdings, and guardianship structures, has been left solely to Miss Amarachi Ngozi. The crowd gasped. That small girl? From the market? Spirit husband, I said it. She must be cursed. Or blessed. Mama Ifeoma fainted on the spot. But Amarachi sat still, her head high. She had no answers to give them yet. Back in the mansion, she walked to the library. She found the red-spined book. Behind it, wrapped in brown cloth, were documents, birth certificates, hidden donations, wire transfers, coded ledgers, and a final envelope. Inside was a list. Names, dates, locations. Senator T. Enugu, 2013. Pastor C. Jos, 2015. Chief A. Bielsa, 2017. And one last name, circled in red ink, someone from Ogidi-Ago. Amarachi's breath caught. At the bottom, one last message. If they come for you, don't be afraid. You carry fire now. Weeks passed like a slow-burning flame. The villagers kept their distance, unsure if Amarachi was blessed or cursed, but they could not deny what was happening. The clinic that once turned Chisholm away was now rebuilt, its walls repainted, its shelves stocked with medicine Amarachi herself had ordered. Children were treated without deposits, and the nurses now bowed when mothers entered. A small school rose near the Nkwo Ogidi market, right where Amarachi once sat under the udara tree, selling oranges. The building was painted yellow with a hand-painted sign, "Incheta House Memory is Power." She paid the teachers' salaries. She bought uniforms, and she gave out pencils with names engraved. Not her name, but the names of girls who never returned. At night, she walked the halls of the mansion alone, checking locks, reading letters, dusting frames. But she didn't feel alone. Because they were there, in the letters, in the photos, in the silence she had learned to carry. Then, on the 40th day after Chief Obiajulu's death, it arrived. A journalist from Lagos, chasing a rumor. A girl inherits a fortune, a child bride turned queen, a mansion on a hill filled with ghosts. But what he found wasn't a ghost. It was a movement. Amarachi didn't grant interviews. She didn't pose for photos. But the journalist saw what she had built. He left in silence. The next week, her story went viral. The girl who carries fire. She was 12. Now she burns traditions. Ogidi-Ago's child widow turns her mansion into a shelter. Girls began arriving. Adaisi, 9, rescued from a forced marriage in Abakaliki. Salma, 11, who had walked barefoot from Kano. Each girl was met not with pity, but with beds, meals, books, and notebooks, just like the one Amarachi had once held. Barrister Zainab set up a legal registry funded by the estate that made it illegal to secretly marry off any girl under 18 in Anambra. She named it the Obiajulu Order. Amarachi nodded quietly. It was right. But still, she knew there was more. She opened the file of names Chief had left her. She and Zainab began to investigate, quietly, thoroughly. When they launched the Ogidi report, it named 12 powerful men, senators, chiefs, pastors. One name belonged to a respected elder in Ogidi-Ago. He disappeared 2 nights later. The fire was spreading. By the time Amarachi turned 14, she had spoken at the United Nations, published in African journals, and appeared in documentaries. She refused awards. She accepted justice. And then one afternoon, she returned, to the same spot where she once sold oranges, barefoot and voiceless. Now she stood in clean slippers, surrounded by laughing girls chasing chalk dust in the wind. A small girl tugged her wrapper. "Auntie Amarachi," she asked shyly, "are you a queen now?" Amarachi smiled. "No," she said. "Queens wear crowns." She tapped her chest gently. "But I carry fire." That night, as the village quieted under the weight of stars, Amarachi lit a candle in the library and opened her journal. She wrote just 4 words. "He gave me light." The wind stirred the curtains. The flame danced. And for a moment, she heard his voice again. Soft, steady, proud. "I always saw you." But this time, she didn't cry. She closed the book, blew out the flame, and walked out into the night. And behind her, the fire kept burning.